this never gets old. I miss this, you know, seeing real people and talking in real life. This is amazing. Thank you all for being here again. This is Impact Day 2. We're going to have a conversation about building team culture, and I'm going to gamify the beginning if that's okay. Because the attention spans are so short, and because we now have a new CEO of Twitter, I guess, I'm going to ask you all to tweet your introduction. You don't have to actually tweet it, but 280 characters or less right now. If everyone can introduce yourself, 280 characters or less. Let's start with you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Anna. I lead HR at Allegro, and I'm helping my colleagues to stay focused on people aspects in this whole complex world that is changing. And my biggest leadership lesson is actually growing my 2 kids.
I think that was like 2 tweets, but it's one of those things you do like 1/2 and then go to 2/2.
I'm getting censored by Dan.
Mario.
Hi everyone, Mario Shiliashki. I have the privilege to lead PayU globally. My name is Bulgarian despite the first Italian and last sounding Polish.
All right.
Okay, so since I already introduced myself, I'll introduce myself personally. So I was raised in the Midwest of the US in a place called Minnesota. I moved to Paris in 2000. My husband is French, and my 2 boys have recently explained to me that they are French.
Okay.
My name is Bartek, starting with a small b. For those who know me, I'm representing Mastercard. For those who don't know me, I'm representing Mastercard.
Thank you, Bartek.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ania Grabowska. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer working for Żabka. I'm responsible for customers, and we serve like 3 million customers a day, each day. Mother of 2 daughters.
All right. So now we're going to go to rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask a question, whoever can answer fastest, but we'll get everyone's thoughts on this. So 1-line answers only. I promise I'll let them answer longer than 1 line eventually, but for now, just 1 line. What is one thing you learned about yourself during the pandemic? And go.
I'll start. So during, more like after the pandemic, I learned how much energy I get from actually being around people. I'd forgotten. And it's great to be here.
Amazing.
I think, you know, one thing is to really realize that despite the clothes we are wearing, despite the room decor, we are just passionate individuals, really engaged in working and getting the stuff done.
I was absolutely shocked how effective I could be during pandemic working remotely and improving work-life balance. But if it continues, I would die because I'm sourcing energy from people.
Got it.
Yeah, I've learned very much so that, you know, we shouldn't waste a good crisis and, you know, turn disadvantage into advantage. A crisis is opportunity.
Good.
I learned that I actually, almost as much as teaching face-to-face, I also love teaching online.
Nice. I really connected with the introvert side of myself. Most people know me as the extrovert on stage, but I really engaged with playing the piano and doing puzzles and developing hobbies again, and that was so nice. Top tip for developing, you know what, that's too long a question. We're going to do that one for the next one. What is the greatest impact of the pandemic on work culture? What do you think has shifted the most in the workspace? Rapid fire, 1-line answers.
2 extremists died. One who thought that people must come to the office to be effective. They are not present anymore. But also those who thought that everything can work perfectly remotely all the time is not true as well.
And I think it's, for me, it was fascinating because my book came out about this stuff right at the beginning of right towards the beginning of the pandemic. And then, of course, companies were forced to give their employees all of this freedom. And you were panicking, right? You were like, oh my gosh, people are going to like take all this time off. They're not going to get anything done. And you found out, oh, really? Actually, when I give them freedom, they're even more effective, right? That was very interesting.
All right.
For me, it was how effectively we actually come together globally. So it's actually shortened the distance between cultures, between our teams and offices.
Yes.
It's been actually fascinating to see.
And I will build on what Mario said, and I think the hybrid work expanded the talent pool very much so, and now we have global talents, yes, and we can attract people who wouldn't or couldn't move for a job, yes, now we can have them with us.
For me, it was probably just this blending work and life that is so tough to actually, work in and set boundaries rightly, but at the same time, really getting to know people that we thought we knew from new perspectives, like really getting even more potential from people.
Nice. I want to have a little bit of an open conversation on this, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's actually research for me. So this is some live research material. I'm doing a PhD on AQ, adaptability quotient. The son of a diplomat, I've spent my entire life moving countries every 3 years. So the pandemic coming in was like, okay, just another chapter, we'll just adapt. And Erin, you started talking and you mentioned about flexibility, and that's one of the big topics here for this panel as well. I'm very curious what you think has been the impact of the pandemic on the topic of flexibility in the workspace. And I'm taking notes for my research, so let's go. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Serious question, being part of research. So I think, on the individual basis, it's really about how we adapted, but also finding out that the skill of setting boundaries really needs to be nurtured. I think on the team level, it's really nudging us to go even further in discussing openly how we can be more effective. What do we contribute as individuals? So I think it really just brings up very interesting conversations. Maybe we don't have all solutions, but the topics are upfront.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
I can go next. For me, it's an ongoing topic, and I think we'll discover more as we reopen offices and come back to the office, because that flexibility clearly has increased, right? Everybody has had to increase flexibility to just get stuff done, and we found that we can do that actually pretty effectively in the last 2 years. Now, coming back to the office and navigating how do we give extra flexibility, I think we have an opportunity to actually build an even better environment for our teams than certainly during COVID, but actually even pre-COVID. And that's going to be the flexibility that we'll have to navigate.
So I'm curious about this part that you just mentioned here. Flexibility has been demanded, it is effective, it is expected, and you mentioned environment. So you believe that creating the right environment cultivates flexibility. So essentially what you're saying is it can be learned. Flexibility can be developed and learned, and one of those levers is environment.
Absolutely, I think
so. Expecting your employees to be flexible is one thing. Creating a space for them to be flexible is another thing. Otherwise, you have to fire a bunch of people or be disappointed in their work performance. But yes, I'm curious about other opinions on this topic too.
Yeah, I think talking about creating an environment is also talking about giving them trust.
Okay.
Yes, and flexibility for us was less of command and control, but significantly more of freedom and responsibility, and truly living to our values. Yes, our values is ambitions and responsibility. So we're setting us ambitious goals, giving flexibility to deliver in a responsible manner.
Okay.
So I can only build on that because, in my opinion, flexibility cannot be regulated. So it's about people who are knowing each other. It's about managers who are empowered because they know the best about the performance, about how can they trust to certain individuals, and it's really about empowering them.
Yeah, and I think that I want to come back to the idea of the dilemma, because of course we can all talk about wanting flexibility and innovation, but remember, innovation is in tension with error prevention, right? And I think in reality what we need to do in our organizations is to look around the organization and say, okay, in this part of the organization, error prevention is more important than innovation, right? Like right here, if we had a mistake, that would lead to a disaster. And in those areas, stick to the lessons from the industrial era. Process, rules, policies, right? And then in other parts of your team and organization, oh my gosh, over here, actually a little bit of error, mistakes, it's not going to lead to disaster. Innovation is more important than innovation, right? There, no rules, right? So I think practically we need to really kind of look around and figure out which is the best type of culture for which part of the organization and which industry.
Who should be championing flexibility in the workplace? Is it something that you set up a department Because often when you want like innovation, you have an innovation department. Or if you want to improve work culture, you will have maybe a subsect of HR that are responsible for championing it. So does it come from the top, saying, hey, this is our new direction, this is our new way of working, and now everyone fall in line? Do you create a subset of people who run it? So whose responsibility, or is it personal ownership? You go, all right, the world's changing. I better go online and learn some new courses. I better step out of my comfort zone. How do you cultivate this? It's nice to talk about we need flexibility, but I'm so curious about like, how does it happen? Why do some companies have this flexibility and others don't? Who champions it?
Okay, so can I talk?
Yes, you can
All
talk.
right. So I know often people say to me after that that discussion that we just had, they'll say, "Well, Erin, I really want to do this, but you know, this is not the atmosphere we have in my company, and I don't think my CEO is supporting this. Can I have a different culture in my department than we have in the company?" And I always like this analogy of the of the house versus the room, right? I mean, the organization, the company culture, that's your house, right? That has the foundations, they go into the ground. If you have a vacation policy throughout the company, you probably need to work within those foundations. But you also have a room in the house. Every manager does, and that room belongs to you, right? There you can like kick open the doors and rip down the paper on the walls, right? So I really encourage you to think, you know, what can I do on my team within the foundations of the wall, knowing that the culture I'm developing might be very different than what we have in the entire organization. I've seen people be extremely successful on that kind of more smaller level.
Okay.
Yeah, theoretically, I would agree. I think the dilemma we are facing is, you know, with rapid scaling and around 1,000 people leaders, you know, I would love every people leader to have this, you know, thinking. And I think just nudging them properly and understanding that among people leaders, you know, we have people who've been used to work in hierarchy, in very strict procedures. And like, how do we take them carefully in psychological safe, you know, environment through this process of having a reflection like, wow, you know, should I go online and get those courses and so on. So I think really when I look at my teams, for instance, like how as HR we can nudge this is understanding and inspiring people to go through this process.
Yeah.
So, you know, which room is ready for it, which is like, you know, a dark, closed door, and we need to knock on it.
That's right. Can I respond to that?
And then
Yeah.
can I respond also after that? Because I also have a thought on that, but yes.
Okay, so practically, I mean, you might say, you know what, Erin, that was an interesting talk, but I can't do any of that because we are a pyramid, and I don't think I can just wake up tomorrow morning and say, hey, today I want to be a tree, right? But I believe that the best approach is step by step, right? So what's one step that you can take this week to increase talent density in your organization? Maybe you can't get rid of Fritz. Maybe in your organization you're not allowed to fire people. But maybe instead of hiring 3 new employees, you can pool that money together and just hire 1, right? Whatever it is, one step towards talent density, walk through it, right? And then one thing you can do to increase candor in your organization. Maybe you think, oh my gosh, those 360-degree feedback dinners, no way am I going to touch that. But maybe you're ready for like kind of speed dating feedback in your next team meeting where everyone gives a little bit of one-on-one feedback to one another. Whatever opens for you with candor, walk through it. And once you've taken one step towards talent density and one step towards candor, now you can take one step towards freedom. I had one woman from Volkswagen who was in my class. She said, Erin, almost everything you talked about, there's no way I can do any of it, but I do have 5 people on my top team. I have 100% talent density. I would fight to keep every one of them. So I made a decision. She told me to stop making decisions. I'm not going to make any more decisions myself. When my people come to me, I'll tell them what I think, and then they make the decisions. Whatever you're ready for, one step for freedom, walk towards it. So then back to your point, I think that's the message to our teams, right? To the managers is, you know, not be a tree, right? But one step towards talent, one step toward candor, one step towards freedom, and then eventually we see our pyramid starting to turn on its head.
So I know Anya wants to say something, and the part that I want to pick up is the word nudge. I like that. And my 4 words I tell anyone is start now, start simple. It's that same concept of that one step, one step. Anya?
Okay, I'll attack it from a bit different perspective, that, managers can help organizational design and help different cultures in different departments, yes? At Żabka, we divided ourselves into Żabka Polska, which is about implementation, retail, about here and now and running stores, yes? And Żabka Future, which is about new technology, inventing things, innovation, which has different skill set, also different objectives and time horizon. And finally, we have strategic leadership, that direct us where we should go in terms of the future, yes. So in this case, yes, with the OD, we help ourselves to live the same values, have the same values, but also attract different talents, different skill set, and also different objectives.
So this is a slight twist on Bartek. I know you want to respond to that. I love how you've split it, because in many ways you are providing clarity and you're also aligning people's abilities and talents with a specific role that leads the entire organization, not expecting the same thing from everybody, but kind of saying, okay, this is the future part. That's a really nice response to that. Bartek, what's happening at Mastercard?
I probably should have a little bit different opinion as well. So,
good.
It would be great to have one department which is changing whole world, but then it's landing in the legal department and everything is killed.
Yes.
So I think it's a simple word answering to all of this, and this is culture.
Yes.
So always about culture, which is actually focused on innovation. And I would mention two things here. The first one is, in our organization, we have a saying, thoughtful risk-taking. So of course you cannot take any risk because probably it's too risky, but if you think it well, probably we are encouraged to do so. And then there is one less corporate, and sorry my colleagues in the room, but I will say it, sometimes you need to do things and then ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Right.
Because it can be too long and too complex to really do anything.
So I want Mario to start with this next question here, but right before that, really quickly, because I like the word team culture. So let's end this panel, I know we're already at that point, talking about the different elements of what we think makes effective team culture. But really quick thought exercise. I want you to think about one lever, one element of good team culture. All right? I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about it. I'm going to ask for 5 brave people to just shout out what you think. So for example, I would say cultural diversity, absolutely essential for effective team culture. So that would be my word. And I'm going to ask the panelists to think about their own organizations. And just one piece. I know there's a lot. We could each do long keynotes on what you're doing within your organizations. But just one piece of effective team culture. That was me just buying time. I was giving you 10 seconds. So we've now got our 10 seconds. I need 5 brave volunteers. Yes, sir. Trust. Fantastic. Keep going. Openness. Love that. Courage, empathy, that's a great one. Yes, this side. Responsibility, very important. Psychological safety, nice. Any other pieces that you want to share about what makes for effective team culture? Empowerment. Appreciation of work, very good. This is fantastic. Now, I bought you guys time by working with them, so hopefully each of you, Mario, will start with you. Give us one lever to what you think makes for good team culture.
Thanks for letting me go first. So I think there is this notion of a passionate team can do anything. And one of the ways, there are many ways to create passion, but one of the ways I think is having a lofty and inspirational mission and being very clear about that mission and where the company wants to impact the world. And just one example from our organization at PayU, our mission is to build a world without financial borders where everyone can prosper. And that permeates into everything we do, both locally, in our communities, certainly here in Poland, but also around the world, and globally with merchants and partners. So again, to close, a really lofty, inspirational mission, I think, can create that passion that is key to creating a really effective culture.
I'd love to do a whole conversation on generational difference when it comes to what you expect from work. But for sure, when it comes to millennials and Gen Z, Gen Alpha coming in, what you just mentioned about passion and mission, really, they're not looking at a job description going, tick, I can do that. They're going, do I believe in what this company's doing? Does my work matter? That's not the panel we're talking about here, about intergenerational workspaces, but I love that you brought up passion. That's super important.
Let's create another panel for that.
Yeah, let's do another panel on that one, super. Who else would like to go next?
Thank you. I'll go.
Ladies next.
So
Okay,
because
all of you, same time. Yeah, just kidding.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, Anya.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
Too kind to each other.
So for me, innovation. Yes, and I would build on the words that I heard. Yes, so for me, innovation is about creating open environment that empowered people to test, make mistakes, but learn very fast. Trust in them, shared trust, which makes them bigger and better.
Very good. Thank you for that. Bartek.
I would go for employees' freedom,
Yes.
and I need to elaborate on that, I guess. So last 2 years were actually very, very difficult for all of us. And things which were happening were completely unpredictable. Firstly, pandemic, then 24th of February, the war started just, close to Poland. So those things cannot be predicted, it cannot be then again regulated and somehow well prepared in the future. So then you need to trust on people, how they are reacting to that. And only if you can empower, delegate, and then somehow encourage thoughtful risk-taking, then you can really believe the company will be evolving fast and nicely, especially when it comes to companies like Mastercard, which are operating actually exactly everywhere.
Okay, and I think because we're hearing so many wonderfully positive words, it is good to go back to the dilemmas for a moment. I'm 50. I turned 50 years old in August. I'm very pleased. But when I was 22, I entered the workforce, and I remember everyone was talking about empowerment. 30 years ago, everyone was talking about empowerment. So I think we have to ask ourselves, like, why are we still talking about this, right? And I do think it's because we don't put empowerment together with talent density, right? I mean, how can you possibly empower employees that aren't great, right? Those two things don't make sense, right? So I'm just going to go to like another provocative thing that they say at Netflix. At Netflix, they say we are a team, not a family. And of course, the image of the organization as a family, that's an image from the industrial era when we were hiring people for decades or maybe even for their lives. But you know what? A family is really not a great analogy for teams today. Today, a better one is an Olympic team, right? Which is like, my goal as a manager is to do everything I can to get the very best person on each of those spots, right? And then to work like crazy to get really good collaboration going. And then also to make sure on an ongoing basis, I'm looking to see, okay, is this person still the right person for this spot, right? And it would not be fair to the team if I didn't remove that person at that moment. Okay, I know it sounds very, very brutal, but I do think we need to think about, the dilemma that goes along with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
So, a couple of great words mentioned. And, if you are working on culture, something that typically comes to mind is it needs time. So I'll be provocative and I'll say, for the culture, the speed is important. The bias for action and making things happen. So some of it is the step-by-step approach, I think. But some of it is really taking a close look and saying, how do we allow for this behavior of, ask for forgiveness, not for permission? How do we inspire this? I think, again, in very speedy environment, and most of us are in very fast-moving industries, with the crisis, with a lot of changes happen, what you can do is really you have to think through, not just to say, okay, do it faster. I had a couple of calls this morning where my teams were asking, okay, when can it be done?
Yes.
But really, how do we put it inside the teams through, first of all, getting the right people on the bus. Like when we recruit at Allegro, we look at your analytical skills, clarity in communication, but we also look at your ability to make things happen. And this is not something that we have right now in the talent in the market for granted. And I think the more our organizations can inspire for people to experiment, to gain this experience in impacting in making things happen, it will be better for all of us, you know, for the whole talent in the market. And then second is hierarchy. You know, if you are a 7,000 employees organization like we are right now in the region, you cannot avoid structure and hierarchy. But keeping it there just to be safe, just not to fall apart, and at the same time allowing for teams to evolve, you know, not having those boxes and lines forever, not looking at it as something that is given for 10 years and then maybe we change. And listening to organization, what blocks them in the hierarchy, in the processes, in systems for making things happen. So if you hear something very often in our meetings, is really like, when can it be done? How do we have bias for action? And ultimately, the why, the vision, is the customer. And this is lovely, I think, when you really have your organization thinking and feeling the customer.
I am not a parent, but I imagine that running a company is a little bit like parenting. While there are lots of good ideas here, every child is unique and every company is unique. There is no blueprint. You can read as many books as you want, listen to as many panels as you want, but ultimately you have to understand your unique child and be the right parent for that child. And I guess in your companies, each of you has, for some of it might be incremental change, little by little. For others, it might be a complete strip away. Back to the drawing board. Let's start again. Mari and I were talking backstage about lean methodology. As an entrepreneur, I think about fast, iterate, fail fast, start again. That's my way of thinking. But if you've got 7,000 employees, that is major risky. So it also depends what your shareholders are expecting and all of that. So, these are all really, really good thoughts. Erin, I know you want to jump on it, so I'm going to give you a second here. But these are all really good thoughts. Ultimately, for each of you, as decision makers, you have to think, which of these is relevant to my organization? Because some of these actually sound contradictory opinions. And that is right, because these are different organizations. Go on, Erin.
Yeah, well, as someone who has children, I just wanted to add, I think that being at least the CEO of an organization is a lot more like being a gardener than being a parent.
Okay.
Because as a parent, you just have to accept and love the kid you have. Right? But as a gardener, you're out there trying to create the conditions to develop the personality that you want in the company, right? Making sure you plant the right flowers, that you do the right weeding, and that you're always like getting that environment just right. And of course, as parents, we want the right environment too, but I think we have more control over the personality of our organization than we do over the personality of our children, perhaps.
That's true, and as a gardener, you can go to another garden if you don't like a garden. But if you're a parent, you can't just leave your child and go to... So actually, that's probably a better analogy of gardening. Yes.
What I like in this, I think, is getting the hands dirty. And I think all of us should be really thinking about it and getting the hands dirty.
Okay, I have one analogy as well. Yes, it is about, pouring in champagne, yes? So our job is to get the best champagne, the best glass, yes, and to pour it. These are like resources, talents, etc., yes? But the bubbles will go, from the bottom to the top, yes? And these are ideas, great people, yes.
I'm joining Żabka.
Plenty of champagne.
That. Don't quote that.
They drink champagne. That's what I took away.
Yes, great champagne. Yes, we agree. Yes, yes.
One thing I want to say is I love the analogy of the house and the room and how we create different culture. And one of the things that at least we strive to do, of course, having the right piping and making sure the electricity works in each room is important, right? So to me, that's about a bit of structure and making sure that kind of the basics are right. But then within each room, we've got to listen to the feedback and create an ability within the organization to take that feedback and maybe share it with the other rooms in the house. And this, to us, is very important as a global organization. How do we experiment and implement lean methodology and really experiment fast and fail fast and learn, and then share all these learnings across? So I don't know how you think about sharing and creating that feedback loop within the different rooms in the house.
Okay.
But would love to hear.
I always have something to say. Okay. Something that, another idea about getting this feedback going, I mean, we were talking earlier about putting feedback on the agenda. We were talking about doing the 360 feedback dinners. But what I didn't get to talk about was asking your employees for feedback yourself. Right? I mean, I think the most important feedback is the one where the employees tell you as the boss what you can do in order to be more effective at your job. But in almost all teams, team members don't do that because their amygdala worries that they're going to be kicked out of the team if they do, right? So I would just think that any room where you want to get feedback going, start by putting feedback on the agenda with your one-on-ones, right? So next week, you know, when we're meeting, first thing on the agenda, I'd like you to give me some feedback about what I can do to be a better leader to you. And you know what? I know he won't do it, right? The first time you ask, there's no way your employees are going to give you real feedback. But eventually, if you keep asking, someone will dare. And when someone dares to tell you something that they really think is not good about the way you're leading, that's when you need to celebrate it, right? Oh my gosh, I got this great feedback, right? Tell everybody how much it helped you, and then people will think, oh gosh, maybe she really does want feedback, right? And then eventually you can really get that feedback going up, and once it's going up, then it's much easier to get it going laterally, right? Yeah, thank you.
That's really good. That's a really good way to probably end that because, example, when we started this morning right before you came in, Erin, I needed to bribe people with bananas to be able to contribute. That's exactly how we got people to talk. Those who were here in the beginning, you know, I gave you a banana to talk. I rewarded that behavior. So this time, no bananas required. We just said 5 words and people took part. Now, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed the panel. Did we enjoy this conversation, everybody? Yes. Thank you, everyone. All right. Go that direction. Thank you.